Hi, everyone. This is Taeshima White, and she has spent her career unlocking the power and potential in others. Her two work passions, I've heard her say, are serving her clients and leading people. I have asked her today to chat with me about what it takes to build and lead healthy teams. Taeshima, welcome.
Excited to be here.
Let's jump right in. For any team to become a healthy, high-performing team, there has to be that first step of self-awareness. Tell me about it.
If I walk into the room and I'm authentically myself, usually with red lipstick and big hair and heels, right? Then people in a super conservative setting are like, oh, well, if she can do that, I guess I can do that too. First is modeling it. And then second is just sharing that intention. I was on with one of my direct reports earlier today. He's very analytical. In those moments where he has that aha, that moment of self-reflection and noticing that talent of his, I want him to have pride in it. So I stop in that moment and I really applaud him for bringing that unique skill set to the team. As soon as you as a leader start to, as they are having those moments, which are usually insecurities, Joanna, honestly, when they're bubbling up initially, and you praise that level of diversity within that person, then you foster more of that on an ongoing basis.
I have seen you in meetings walking in with the big hair and the red lipsticks and the heels. And yes, you did inspire me to bring my most authentic self in those moments. That's a really good point. So often the team focuses much more on the team's gaps and weaknesses rather than strengths. Tell me what your philosophy is when it comes to aligning the team to each other as they're moving forward.
Some of it is really framing those with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. I've heard them called lesser talents, which I love. I will often use that language because it's just to really bring down the temperature in the room. For me, I'm very low contact. So when I call that out, I'll tell them, look, hey, I'm very strategic. I operate most times, 50,000 foot. And so I would much rather call out the power that I have rather than the fact that I'm low contact, right? They know where I'm operating versus where I am not. And then the other thing is really forcing the team to get to know each other. Because the truth is, if we're really bonded together, if we really understand the superpowers of each person on the team, if you are someone who's low contact, but you're paired with someone who likes to get into the weeds, it doesn't feel like a weakness anymore. It just feels like that's not the seat at the table that you need to own. So really fostering that teamwork environment, really you getting to know your team, but also helping them to get to know each other is such a critical way for you to bring down the temperature in the room when someone's feeling a bit insecure about something that they would consider to be a weakness or an area of opportunity.
Taeshima, are there specific examples you can give me in how you allow your teammates get to know each other better?
Yes, I actually just joined a new team 4 weeks ago. And so as soon as I came in, one is just setting the intention on when I'm thinking about a team, what that looks like. I also have given them a project to set their intention on what's our commitments to each other? What does that look like? What is success for us? I also start every meeting with an icebreaker. And so today we talked about what's the style that you had back in high school that you were really proud of or you may be embarrassed by. And so we started talking about pegged jeans and we started to talk about mullets and all sorts of things. And it was this really fun way. But once you start to build that trust and once you start to really build those connections, no matter how serious or silly they may be, then you open the door so that people can start to see who each person is individually.
You're not afraid to bring that lightheartedness, that levity, even though I'm sure you always have your eye on the results.
One thing I'll add there, Joanna, I heard a leader say once, you want to go slow now to go faster later. And so where some folks that are very achiever mindset or they really are focused on the outcomes, you may not take that 5 minutes of an icebreaker in a meeting, but I really believe that taking that 5 minutes now is going to shave hours off later. And so I'm willing to make that investment in going slow now in order to go faster later.
For a team to be healthy and high performing, they have to communicate really well. Tell me a little bit more about some of your non-negotiables when it comes to establishing these communication norms within your team.
I love that. I operate with high command. For me, making a decision is very easy and I can make it in a silo very easily. But with the team norms, it's really important for me to maybe set a little bit of a foundation for my team, but for them to really join me in collaborating on what that looks like. And so one of the ones that I've seen often is low ego, high accountability. Being a leader of leaders, there's such a servant attitude that's needed in order to be really effective. I'm a leader. I motivate and inspire. And I can only do that from a place of low ego. And I think it just gets us into the right mindset to really operate and function as a team.
You definitely are a leader of leaders. I have seen you in action, and there is this great amount of clarity and confidence and courage that's behind your command, and I've learned to appreciate it. Do you have a cadence to how you communicate with your team?
Such a great question. Yes, I actually just built a communication matrix for them. People that you're leading really deserve clarity. And so I'm working really hard as I'm building this new team to really not be wasteful of their time, trying to fumble through our framework or what my expectations are and really over-rotate on the amount of clarity I can put in place for them. I have on this communication matrix, I have a strategic meeting where we talk about high-level things and where we're headed. I have a tactical meeting where we're talking about just what stuff do we need to get done and who's going to own it. And then I have representation of meeting with people across my entire organization. So whether it be from my frontline folks and having one-on-ones to get to know them individually to my one-on-ones with my managers, I have all that included there. And then also we do an all hands. So my entire organization gets together on a recurring basis. And the beauty of having that on one document or in one place if you're using a program like Asana is that if you're wondering who's going to be there, what should I be thinking about, how should I prepare for those that like to get ahead of an agenda, you have all of that at your fingertips. And so again, it allows my managers to walk into their week a lot more effective and efficient because they're not fumbling around looking in a lot of different places for the types of information we can have in one place. The other thing I love about this format, it also allows us to come back and renegotiate if something's missing, right? So if there's a topic that's not getting covered, it doesn't quite fit into any of the other boxes, we can ask ourselves, should we look at a different way to communicate?
I want to see that matrix, Taeshima. Okay. I might hit you up after our time together.
Absolutely.
Hand in hand with communication goes collaboration. Are there some intentional ways that you're going to foster collaboration on the team?
The thing that I have really found to be this pivotal moment on any team I've led is the moment where they take a problem and they solve it. And I've seen them really work through some of the early stages of that team cycle much quicker than if they didn't have that problem to start with from the very beginning. My strategy is always to, in the beginning, set it at their feet and then walk away. And of course, offer my support, check in with them, clarify if they need it, but really allow them to work through it together. And what I find is they get to know each other much better. They see the power in the collaboration with one another. And I've also really seen almost non-existent this competition that can get a little petty in the beginning when you're first forming a team.
And so then how do you handle conflict on the team?
I handle it individually. So typically I will seek to understand. I want to know what's the root source of the conflict. I frankly want to know is the conflict both ways, because sometimes people are in a fight by themselves. And then from that point, I make a decision about, do I need to be involved or not? And I will ask the question as frank as that.
For a team to shift to a healthy, high-performing team, there has to be this culture of praise and recognition. What motivates you to encourage your people, and how do you do it?
I love recognition and praise so much because, especially as a leader, you often don't know if you're doing a good job or not. There's not a scoreboard for me to say, are you building engagement today? Do people feel safe with you? It just doesn't exist, right? So if you discover those moments with someone where they're demonstrating the behavior that you're looking for, the best thing you can do for them, for the business, for their team, is to applaud them for it. But the other thing is, you've probably heard me say, I light people's hearts on fire. And one of the ways that I do that is to over-rotate on telling them when they're showing up in their superpower, when they're really doing dynamic work that we are completely lucky to have them on the team for. And so I always want to do that. I try to customize it in a way that they are going to appreciate it most. So whether that be something that's more broad within the team, whether that be a little trinket or gift, whether that be recognition even coming from somewhere else. I always want to be thoughtful about, is there, based on what I know about them so far, a better way for me to handle this so that it lands in as impactful of a way as I intend for it.
I like it a lot, particularly because we forget, maybe all too often, that recognizing or affirming someone really doesn't have to cost anything. We all understand the concept and how important praise and recognition is, and yet we fail to do it. Most team leads don't do it often enough, don't do it well enough. What do you think stands in the way of leaders praising and recognizing their people?
I think some of it is just time. I have certainly gotten caught in this whirlwind where I've gotten super busy and I think to myself, oh my gosh, I don't remember the last time I said thank you to my team. I don't remember the last time I demonstrated some appreciation for them. Also, if we haven't really built it into our system, especially our culture, it's easy to not know that it isn't happening. So you have to almost build it in. And then I think the third thing is maybe even assuming that you're doing it, but not really checking in to see if it's as effective as possible. So to be vulnerable and share a little bit of a story, I had a manager who had a Gallup strength significance as his number one. And he was doing a fantastic job. And what I would do often was in the team meeting would, call out how he was making a contribution and with that high significance in mind. Now, what I hadn't done was really ask him, when did he feel appreciated, or what was the best way for me to show that with him? Because he started to think it was insincere, because although it was happening in a public forum, we weren't bringing that up. I wasn't bringing that up in his one-on-ones as often. And it wasn't as glowing in his review as he would have liked to see it. And so it was really eye-opening for me because the intention was there, but the delivery wasn't meeting his expectations. So once I had a chance to make some space for that conversation and dig in a bit, then I was able to get a lot better at recognizing him in a way that was most impactful.
The powerful question, how do you like to be recognized?
One other question I'll offer is I will also ask, when have you felt most appreciated in a job or a role, and why was that? And so oftentimes you'll get some little nuggets of, oh my gosh, that was this town hall for the whole company and they brought me up on stage, and right, it tells me right then that they like public recognition. Now, they may have been more modest had I asked the question a different way, but by asking it that way, you can go a little bit different in the line of your questioning to make sure you're spot on.
Right alongside praise and recognition lives feedback.
Yes.
Talk to me about how you handle giving feedback to your people.
A model that I share with my team to empower them with their teams, but also to set an expectation in their working with me, is I tell them, when you care about someone, you tell them the truth. My philosophy on feedback is really to say you have to be courageous as a leader, and you have to care enough about your people to tell them the truth, even if it's constructive feedback. And so I will often go into a conversation, and even if I'm nervous, if I'm uncomfortable, whatever feeling I'm having, I'm happy to share that with them to set the stage. And then I try to be as direct as possible. So it may sound like I'm a little nervous walking into this conversation with you because we've never had to have this conversation before, or this type of conversation, but I care enough about you to give you the tough feedback, really coming from a place of care and love in the meeting. And then the other thing that I'll often do is I will ask them after I've delivered the feedback, tell me what you hear me saying. Usually what will happen is some people will get very emotional, and what they heard you say isn't what you intended. And so it gives you an opportunity to clear it up, and or even make a decision about, should you continue with the conversation or pause for reset? I will always have a follow-up. Just to say, I know the conversation before was a little tougher than you probably were expecting. Tell me where you are with that, and what can I do to support you? And that way you're not just delivering this feedback and then they don't know what to do with it.
Taeshima, that's so powerful. What can you do to foster healthy partnering on the team?
You really do have to set an intention for it. I'll give you an example. So my team right now, we're doing some hiring. So my title is director. My managers report into me, and we're hiring some team leads. And so they were asking some questions for me on, and this was like week 1, right? Maybe week 2. And they were asking some questions about, did I have a preference around the hiring process? And so I used almost every opportunity possible to say, hey, listen, we'll have these leads assigned to a team, but when we talk about team, we're the greater team, right, in Tempe. And so we should really be thinking holistically about it, right? So pausing my folks for a second, inviting them to zoom out and remember nobody wins if everybody doesn't win.
And tell me your reaction to the statement by Rich Cargards: build your strengths to mitigate your weaknesses, partner up. Tell me if you see it play out on your teams, that idea of partnering up.
I love that. I actually have a new peer who is high achiever, high competition, high responsibility. Achiever happens to be my number, I think 28. And so, one, it's important for me to raise that awareness with him so that I don't create a point of frustration. And I said to him, Jay, listen, if the deadline's Friday, I'm going to probably get it done Friday morning. I don't get any satisfaction by getting it done Thursday or Wednesday. That doesn't move me. And so it's good for me to know that, but it's also good for me to partner with someone like him. I had a task that I was going to get done for the team last night, and I can see that he's in the workbook, and I was finishing it. So I sent him a little note that said, hey, I'm finishing. Don't take anything out of here yet because I'm not done. I know him well enough now to know that, but he also knows me well enough to know when I said end of day, it really is end of day. And that's, I'll get it done, but it's not going to be early. So I think the partnership is so good because it really does come back to the sum of the two parts becomes greater than any of them individually.
Mm-hmm. And that idea of over communicating, because your example is fantastic when you were able to slow down the tape for your calling and say, hey, I'm not you. So there's no jolt of energy. I love that. Yes. As we're coming to the end of our time together, Taeshima, I want to toss one more question your way. And that is, what is one tip that you can offer to a team leader who's just stepping into leading a team?
The first one I will share is be intentional. There will be so many things that will pull you in different directions, business needs, various metrics, people. But if you can set your intention very clearly and check to make sure that intention is aligned with the greater organization, you're going to be in a fantastic spot. Once you set that intention, the second piece is really getting to know your people and really figuring out how can you live that intention every day based on the unique needs of each person on your team. Then you can figure out, based on whatever your intention is that you set to start with, how you can really flex your leadership style to be most effective with them in order to have the greater good of the team.
Taeshima, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for splashing us with some pretty amazing principles that we can take away and right back to our teams. I appreciate you.
I love that. Anytime. We have to do this again.